Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
You're happy, but you're also anxious. So my family's still there. I have my whole family there.
Why are we doing a deal for 40 hostages? We need to bring all 100 home.
As a ceasefire deal is reached in the Israel-Hamas war, Palestinians and Israelis in BC share worry and optimism. Plus,
as a Canadian and as a British Columbian, that I'm going to stand strong with premiers to make sure that we're not limiting the tools available to the federal government to respond.
BC stands with Ottawa and other provinces as they consider options to Donald Trump's tariff threat. But there is one notable exception, and
I have lost trust and confidence in the mayor.
Vancouver's longest-serving city councillor calls it quits. Adrian Carr steps down immediately, setting up by-elections for 2 council seats.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. There has been a major breakthrough in the Middle East crisis. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire in Gaza and a release of hostages. The deal comes after intense negotiations in Qatar. As Crystal Gumansing reports, it consists of 3 phases and is set to go into effect on Sunday.
The negotiating efforts have been successful for the 2 sides to reach an agreement.
For weeks, people around the world have been waiting to hear if the fighting in Gaza would stop. With a ceasefire deal done, scenes of joy erupted. In Han Yunis, young people cheered and danced. By God, we are very happy that this crisis, sadness, bombing, and death that has happened to us is finally over, said Abdallah al-Baisuni. The deal has multiple phases, and while the parties have signed off, the hope is that it will lead to lasting peace. There was a ceasefire back in November 2023, but it held for just days. Qatar's prime minister is hopeful the deal that so many countries work to secure will in fact lead to lasting peace this time.
I believe that it all depends on the parties of the agreement and acting in good faith in that agreement in order to ensure that no collapse happening to that deal.
Now, in phase 1, Israeli forces are expected to remain in designated areas in Gaza. Palestinians will be allowed to return home to the north. Aid is to move unimpeded, and hostages are to be released. In exchange for imprisoned Palestinians from Israeli jails, 33 people held in Gaza will be set free. Women, children, older adults, and the sick.
For us, it's only the beginning. We want them all here.
Arnon Cohen gathered in Tel Aviv's hostage square with other Israelis, hoping for the safe return of loved ones. U.S. President Joe Biden says the deal is what he proposed months ago. And while he says his and President-elect Donald Trump's administration worked together with those in the Middle East, the incoming leader is not the reason the deal got done.
Thank you. Who takes credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke?
The Israeli cabinet still has to sign off on the agreement. They are expected to meet on Thursday. Crystal Gumansing, CBC News, London.
The ceasefire deal is bringing relief for many people here in BC with close ties to people in Gaza and in Israel. As Michelle Gassoub explains, even as some celebrate, there is deep worry about what the future will hold.
I hear people are happy in Gaza. I hear their voice. They were yelling.
As a ceasefire deal is reached, relief for Canadians with family in Gaza. Even so, the pain and loss of the past 15 months is hard to bear.
I wish a peace for everyone in the world, for Israel, for Palestine, for everyone. All the world are tired and sick from the barbaric war.
Even half a world away, signs of the war are plastered across Vancouver.
Maybe, the swords can be beaten into pruning hooks, but there's still a lot of concern that remains with the remaining hostages.
Rabbi Andrew Rosenblatt says the deal is being met with cautious optimism as his community grapples with the difficult truth that some hostages will remain in captivity for now.
It is a very internally difficult question for Israelis and for Jews. It's not like this is the kind of a moment which is at all simple for people.
Feelings are also mixed for Gazans like Omar.
I was happy with the news, but this morning's meeting came up with nothing, not even a plan to get our loved ones out. It makes me frustrated.
He's been in talks with the federal government to bring his family and others to Canada, a process he says is stalled even as a ceasefire deal is reached.
It has been a year and a half of torture, mental breakdowns after mental breakdowns. This is my life, literally, for the past year and a half, different screens, trying to read the news.
Still, a hope this negotiated peace will last, allowing the rebuild of Gaza to begin and hostages to return to their loved ones.
It reminds everyone that the cost of war is great. And so when you have a ceasefire, don't break it.
Prayers across community that this round of peace will hold. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
A caregiver has taken the stand for a second day at a coroner's inquest into the death of a woman who lived with Down syndrome and starved while in home care. As Belle Puri explains, the worker says the organization that employed her provided little support.
Astra Dahl always felt she worked alone, not in a partnership with the Port Coquitlam Social Services Agency that employed her. Dahl says the environment at Kinsite Community Service was more about paperwork than about individuals. Florence Gerard lived in Dahl's government-funded and accredited support home for 6 years. In 2018, Gerard died of starvation. Dahl was convicted of failing to provide the necessities of life and sentenced to 15 months in jail. At a coroner's inquest, Dahl responded sharply to questions from lawyers for Kinsite and Gerard's family. At one point, she responded, "I feel like I'm on trial again. I'm really not enjoying this." Dahl was asked if she had regrets about her experience, and she said, "I wish I hadn't done home share. I would tell anyone not to do home share." Then she was asked if she was sorry about what happened to Florence Gerard, and she responded, "Of course I am." Then she turned away and appeared to wipe tears from her cheek. Sharon Bursey is Florence Gerard's sister.
Obviously, nobody was monitoring Astrid or my sister. Nobody was monitoring the home share coordinator. I mean, there's every level, and nobody is taking accountability. Nobody is looking down on the next person to see if they're doing their job.
Astrid Dahl's son was the next to take the stand. Samuelson Sirac said Florence Gerard was like a family member. He said he was concerned when he saw her drastically losing weight, but it was his mom's job to look after that, not his. He says he was told she's getting old. That's just what happens. The morning she died, he said, it was horrible. It was heartbreaking. I was shattered, he said. And then he went on to ask the coroner's lawyer, what does this have anything to do with Kinsite's lack of care? He testified Kinsite was never around as time went on. He says there was less and less help and more pushback. Belle Puri, CBC News, Burnaby.
Premier David Eby and his fellow leaders met with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier in the day to talk about Canada's next steps in responding to Donald Trump's tariff threat. But as Katie DeRosa reports, they are not all united on the best approach.
Two West Coast provinces with very different takes on the looming trade war with the U.S. In BC's corner, Premier David Eby wants to hit back at Donald Trump's tariff threat with a threat of his own, an export ban on critical minerals, which are mined in BC and which the U.S. relies on to make a range of electronics.
Continue to support tariff response as well as the possibility of export taxes as well as export bans of particular and strategic commodities from Canada to the United States, including from British Columbia to the United States.
In Alberta's corner, Premier Danielle Smith is ready to fight any retaliatory tariffs, especially on Alberta energy. Smith refusing to sign a joint statement released this afternoon by the premiers and prime minister after their meeting in Ottawa. Smith wrote on social media that Alberta will not agree to export tariffs on energy or other products.
Well, Premier Smith needs to do what she feels she needs to do with respect to her home audience. And I just know that as a Canadian and as a British Columbian, that I'm going to stand strong with premiers to make sure that we're not limiting the tools available to the federal government to respond to this.
One tariff expert says Premier Smith knows well that she holds most of the cards because of America's reliance on the oil and gas sector.
As everybody knows, the area where Canada has the most leverage is in the oil and gas sector. That is our #1 export to the United States. Now, if we are using this particular industry to send a message, it would be heard loud and clearly, and very likely with higher prices at the pump.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who at an earlier press conference wore a hat that says Canada is not for sale, made the case for a Team Canada approach.
Protect your jurisdiction. But country comes first. United we stand, divided we fall.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he hopes that Trump does not follow through with his tariff threat, which would hurt businesses and consumers on both sides of the border. But if tariffs do become a reality, all options, including retaliation, are on the table. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
Now, one of the specifics of potential tariff retaliation is BC's role in supplying key rare minerals to the U.S. Liam Britton explains how David Eby is highlighting one mineral as a key element and how Canada responds to trade barriers.
On the periodic table, right after zinc and gallium, is a little element called germanium.
If the United States doesn't get this metal from the Teck smelter and Trail, it's not available at all.
David Eby alluded to this critical mineral when outlining how BC could help provide leverage in a tariff battle with President-elect Trump. But why? What's germane about germanium?
What it is used for is super important.
John Steen is a mining economist at the University of British Columbia.
Solar panels used for fibre optics, and particularly with military applications like night vision goggles. It's absolutely vital to a whole range of technologies.
And if Canada withholds its supply to the U.S., he says,
that would be disastrous for U.S. technology.
And when it comes to Canada's supply, Trail BC looms large. It's home to the Teck smelter Eby mentioned. Teck says it is a primary U.S. supplier of germanium, and Canada's only one. It's a byproduct of zinc ore concentrate processing.
It's our largest employer. It's very important to the community.
Trail's mayor says she doesn't want to speculate on how trade disruption could impact the 1,500 Teck workers in the community, but says Canada's premiers need to deal with the issue with unity.
Because in the end, I think that Canada will be affected and the United States will be affected.
In the last provincial election, Eby's NDP promised to speed up mine approvals while balancing environmental impacts and First Nation consultation. Critical mineral mining is set to expand in BC, according to the industry.
The 17 critical mineral projects alone represent some $32 billion in potential investment. So there's lots at stake, notwithstanding some geopolitical risk.
Steen believes these critical minerals have impacts beyond simple economics, painting a picture of scientific advancements at the center of a new Cold War between the West, China, and Russia.
And at the base of these technologies are some really exotic minerals, which are the new oil.
Critical minerals like germanium might not be household names, but they could become more prominent as trade tensions ratchet up. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Darius Mandavi is here for our look at the weather and some moisture moving in.
That's right. You can see all that blue there moving in, and then after that, a weak cold front going to separate and head down towards southern BC. You can see some of that precipitation coming down here, but also just look at all that cloud moving in. Even where we don't have radar coverage, you can tell starting to see some of that flurry and shower activity, but not here on the south coast. Within the next little while, well, sorry, that's not entirely true. We are starting to see some of that come down to the south coast, just not where we have radar coverage. So the North Island starting to get that first, going to see that for a little while, pretty consistently rain, but then lightening up pretty quick. Some showers linger into tomorrow morning, but other than that, Dan, once we get into tomorrow afternoon, clearing up and staying clear at least through Friday and into the weekend.
Very good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
Vancouver's longest-serving city councillor steps down immediately. Why Adrian Carr is leaving local politics. After the break. Vancouver's longest-serving city councillor has resigned. The Green Party's Adrian Carr will vacate her seat effective immediately. She says she is unhappy with the way council is functioning.
I've come to the conclusion that on the issues that really drive me, that drove me to run for office, and have been predominant issues in my life around particularly sustainability and the health of this planet, I can't make much progress. In addition, I have lost trust and confidence in the mayor.
Carr, who is now 72, was first elected in 2011. Her resignation comes a little over the halfway mark of the current council term, and as Vancouver is already headed into a by-election to replace another councillor. Her role as one of 3 opposition councillors was often a passionate one, focused on social change and climate issues.
I really do want to recognize and celebrate again the work she's done on things, those very important files and the things that we've been able to work on together. Politics is tough. You don't always get what you want, and so disagreements and sort of going different directions is just part of the work.
The city has not yet said when a by-election will be held, but a report about it is expected at council next week. Simon Fraser University now says its discontinued football program will not return. It says a decision announced in 2023 has now been made final. The university argues it made the call because the team no longer has a place to play in the NCAA. It says the move is part of a new athletics and recreation strategy aimed at engaging more students and an overall need to be more financially prudent. Several football players filed an injunction to reinstate the program, but were denied by the courts. Colorado is trying to reintroduce wolves to the state by importing 15 of the animals from our province. One biologist, though, says the plan leaves many questions.
There's a lot of pushback, largely driven by landowners, ranchers, hunters, some rural communities. So, the fate of these animals doesn't just rely on whether or not they can adapt to their new environment, but it also relies on whether or not they are tolerated, accepted by the people of Colorado.
Officials in the state said they've put in measures to prevent the BC wolves from preying on livestock. CBC News contacted BC's Ministry of Water and Land for comment, but have not yet heard back. Vancouver is often labeled a lonely city where it's hard to make friends. It's why one woman is challenging herself to do dozens of activities to meet new people. Yasmin Khanea has her story.
So I live in Vancouver, and I have no friends.
23-year-old Anna Ho is on a journey, taking on 30 activities 1 week at a time in the hopes of finding friendship.
I started it because I kind of hit like a rough patch in my life where, as you grow older, you outgrow friendships, and sometimes, you have different morals with your friends, and so you kind of have to put yourself first. I'm on my way to an Airbnb to meet a group of strangers.
Some of her activities have been riskier than others, like going to a music festival with people she doesn't know.
Throughout the night, it was actually kind of hard to talk to people in this type of event.
She's also gone to painting classes and used an app to meet friends. Her videos have garnered hundreds of thousands of views, and her comment section is full of people who say they're lonely too.
I feel like not a lot of people talk about it in terms of dealing with loneliness, especially in Vancouver, because there's like a saying how Vancouver is like the most unfriendly city in Canada. And to a certain extent, I do kind of agree with that.
So do other Vancouverites.
I found difficulty making friends when I moved from a different city because I moved from Kelowna.
And I think people have already selected their friends, and it's just a bit hard to fit in.
I think people they need to work on getting out of their comfort zone a little bit. I think everybody's a little bit lonely. Everyone's looking for company, especially in big cities like this.
This UBC professor specializes in friendships. She says things like rain can explain why Vancouver can be seen as a lonely city.
So just looking at the geography and the weather patterns of a city can tell us a bit about how much effort people have to make to be social.
Still early in the challenge, Ho says she's made one genuine friendship so far. She says even if she doesn't make more friends,
well, that's okay. Character growth.
Yasmin Ranea, CBC News, Vancouver.
A gorgeous sunny day in Victoria, but a chance of showers is on its way. Darius has your BC-wide forecast coming up. Back to our top story now. People here in Vancouver are marking and celebrating the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement. It comes after a harrowing 15 months of misery and bloodshed. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas-led militants killed about 1,200 people in Israel and continue to hold 94 captives. The Israeli military responded by pummeling Gaza. The region's health ministry says more than 46,000 people have been killed, and most of its population of 2 million displaced. As Sasha Petrusik explains, the news of the ceasefire is still fresh, even as Israel hits more targets in Gaza.
Moments after the ceasefire announcement, Israeli bombardment continued in Gaza, killing 18 people, and with days to go before the deal comes into effect. But just the prospect of peace brought tears of joy to Palestinians who've endured 15 months of death and destruction. I cry from my heart, she says.
You can see the jubilation in the faces of the people here. We are really overwhelmed with happiness because the bloodshed has ended.
Optimism in Israel, too, tempered by uncertainty for hostage families.
Actually, we don't know their conditions. We are hoping they are good and well, and we'll see them soon as possible, alive and healthy.
33 hostages are to be freed, the first 3 on Sunday. In exchange, Israel is to pull back its troops to a perimeter within Gaza's borders less than a kilometer wide. It's agreed to let in 3 times more food and other aid to ease the suffering and to let Palestinians back to their homes, or what's left of them, in Gaza's north. And like the last time there was a brief ceasefire to exchange hostages for prisoners, hundreds of Palestinians are to be released from Israeli jails. Hamas was defiant, taking pride in its devastating October 7th attack and its refusal to be pushed out of Gaza. Israeli leaders defended the deal. It will bring deeply painful moments, says President Isaac Herzog, but it's needed to bring our sons and daughters home. Some Israelis protested the ceasefire after it was announced, vowing to keep fighting against Hamas. But for most, freeing hostages is Israel's most pressing priority.
And this is a live shot of Robson Square in downtown Vancouver, where people are gathered to mark the ceasefire. Today, a moment for everyone impacted to reflect on the past 467 days. Back to one of our top stories. This time next week, Donald Trump will be back in the White House, and he has promised to put tariffs on all Canadian products. Canada's premiers met with the Prime Minister to discuss how to respond. They're not revealing any particular measure or strategy, but here's what Justin Trudeau had to say after the First Minister's meeting.
We will stand up for Canada. We will protect Canadians. We will make sure that we are there to show what this country is made of. At the same time, we've also agreed that no one region of the country should disproportionately bear the burden of standing up for all other Canadians. We have made it very clear that everything is on the table as potential responses, but we've also been very, very clear that it has to be fair across the country.
Ontario's premier says if Canada does impose retaliatory measures, they have to be hard and united. Alberta's premier, though, did not sign a joint statement from the meeting. Danielle Smith says she opposes an export ban or tariff on Alberta oil going to the U.S. It is the time of year when chilly Canadians like to head south. But one family in Saskatoon has a cautionary tale for you after a rough time in Mexico. They say their hotel pressured them to sign a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for medical help. As Jeremy Warren explains, it's a story the resort in Cancun worked to keep quiet.
It was a Christmas to remember at the Royalton Splash Riviera Resort in Cancun.
Booked at the Royalton.
But Allison Field says she felt more like a hostage than a guest. Field, her husband, and their 4-year-old son got food poisoning along with dozens of other guests, so sick they needed to go to the hospital. Field says resort staff told her she had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA, before leaving the resort.
It was clear, it was flagrantly clear that they really didn't care about us or our health. Like, my son is 4, he was vomiting and shaking, and they wouldn't let us leave, and she just kept trying to get me to sign the NDA. So yeah, I was incredibly upset.
Field says other resort guests have told her they were also pressured to sign a confidentiality agreement. One expert says NDAs are becoming more common in the image-obsessed hospitality industry.
What that message with the NDA sends is that we're not going to fix this problem. We don't care if our guests get sick. And that's not the image you want to put out to the broader audience when the NDA and the news of the NDAs do come out. It's not a good business practice.
Hotel giant Marriott International lends its brand and loyalty rewards program to the resort.
Royalton Splash is owned by Blue Diamond Resorts. A Blue Diamond spokesperson says the company is investigating.
I felt like they were stopping us from receiving care. They were putting my family's lives in danger, really, when they were incredibly ill. Yeah, I did. I felt held hostage. And people did sign the NDAs, because if they're really sick and they really need to go to the hospital, sometimes they're just going to sign it. But it's totally under duress.
While some guests did sign the NDAs for compensation, Field is glad she did not. She's free to use her story as a warning to other travelers. Jeremy Warren, CBC News, Saskatoon.
An international group of experts is proposing new ways to define and diagnose obesity. The idea is to move away from the controversial body mass index and to reduce stigma for people with larger bodies. Mike Crawley looks at how it could change the approach to healthcare.
Sandra Bernison volunteers with a weight loss support group called TOPS, which stands for Taking Off Pounds Sensibly. She hears from members how obesity affects their lives.
They're made to feel like they're not as good as a person that's slim.
BMI stands for Body Mass Index.
For decades, obesity has been defined by body mass index, a ratio of weight to height. Medical experts believe BMI is too blunt an instrument.
It doesn't tell me anything about your body fat, your muscle.
Canadian pediatrician Catherine Morrison runs this lab at McMaster University that can accurately measure people's metabolism. She's on the international panel that agreed on a new way to define and to diagnose obesity.
Very important to enable folks to get the treatment that they need. The advantage of them is
the key shift, emphasizing the health effects of excess body fat.
This removes, we hope, the sort of burden on the individual that they have in some way caused this condition for themselves, and that we will treat it as we do any other disease like cancer and type 2 diabetes.
The new diagnosis is officially called clinical obesity. The experts say the change communicates that obesity can be a serious illness, not a mere lifestyle choice. It means doctors will need to consider how excess fat is harming a person's organs or limiting their daily activity to make a diagnosis. This obesity specialist supports the shift.
Diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver, all of those medical conditions, real medical conditions that cause death, should be addressed by a medical team. A larger body size should not be addressed by a medical team.
Obesity increases the risk of diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. The commission that developed the new definition says the growing use of weight loss drugs makes it all the more important to diagnose obesity accurately. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Hamilton.
Toronto rapper Drake is suing his own record label over Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us. Both artists are signed with Universal Music Group. Lamar released the song last May, which makes defamatory remarks about the Canadian artist. Thomas Dagla has more on Drake's move.
They not like us. They not like us.
Soaring to the top of the charts last year as a viral earworm, Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us is now the focus of a defamation suit filed by his Canadian rival, Drake. The Toronto megastar is suing Universal Music, the record giant that represents both artists, blaming the company for a campaign to create a viral hit out of a rap track that falsely accuses Drake of being a pedophile.
He may have some valid points,
when you get into the allegations.
Indeed, that song makes unproven accusations that Drake strongly denies.
I hear you like you better not ever go to cell block.
Drake claims Universal used bots to artificially inflate the song's popularity on Spotify. And he points to this official illustration for Lamar's track showing Drake's Toronto home with red markers, suggesting he's housing sex offenders. All of it, he says, leading last May to a drive-by shooting outside his mansion. Drake says his security guard very nearly got killed, recounting publicly for the first time Drake and others labored to keep the man alive by applying pressure to the gunshot wound with towels. Blood was everywhere. The star says he even pulled his young son out of a Toronto school over safety concerns. Drake alleges Universal purposely drove down his popularity as his contract was up for renewal.
His value was up here, and now, ironically, they could argue that his value is down here. How did that happen? I think that's what he's trying to get at.
Universal Music Group calls Drake's allegations untrue and illogical. As for Lamar, he's set to headline the Super Bowl halftime show next month, meaning an audience of millions will likely hear Not Like Us once more. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
We have a bit of news about us now. The CBC is expanding its local and regional news coverage across this country, adding up to 25 new journalists in more than a dozen underserved communities. Canadian publishers are set to get $100 million a year for the next 5 years from Google, which will be paying Canadian news outlets for using their content. The CBC is set to get 7% of that. 8 of the new journalists will be based here in BC, covering areas like the Fraser Valley, the North Island, the Interior East, the Peace Region, Penticton, and the Sea to Sky. After the break, a check-in with the wildfire fighting efforts in LA and how British Columbians can be better prepared for similar disasters here. Stick around. Members of the BC Wildfire Service are in Los Angeles to support firefighting efforts there. The service has had a partnership with CAL FIRE in anticipation of an emergency just like this one. More now from one of the strategists in LA.
We are treating it as an incredible opportunity. It's an unprecedented situation. We're learning lots. And most of all, we really are just happy to be here to help the people of Los Angeles and the state of California overall. We've had a partnership or a collaboration agreement with CAL FIRE for a few years now, and we've been working towards this moment. So our programs that are in place allow us to exchange people, have a lot of experience with a lot of different fuel types, a lot of different topography, and it allows us to come down somewhere else like here and enable us to just start working immediately for the most part. So the work that we're doing in partnerships involves everything from pilots and technology, research, innovation, as well as response operations.
Now, as that work continues, people in Los Angeles are bracing for more dangerous and dry wind gusts that could trigger new fires. But as Steve Futterman tells us, there's hope the worst of them may have passed.
The winds did come, but they were not as strong as expected. And now it's hope the worst may be over.
We understand your desire to return to your community. However, significant safety and infrastructure issues remain.
Throughout the day, with the potential of strong winds, fire crews were pre-positioned in strategic locations, ready to jump on any new outbreaks. And there were several, but in each case, fire crews got the upper hand. This is one time people are happy the weather forecast was wrong. It appears Los Angeles has dodged a bullet, but there is still a long and difficult and expensive road ahead. A week after the fires began, the devastation is still hard to totally comprehend. Entire neighborhoods no longer exist. They are completely flattened. And examples of the human toll and the psychological fallout is evident every day.
When you stare at your front door that's gone, and you have the few moments to contemplate, what does this really mean to my life? I mean, I still don't fully understand everything I have is gone.
Also today, new reports in the Los Angeles Times that on the night the fires broke out, the LA Fire Department did not deploy all personnel available. The newspaper reports fire officials chose not to order the firefighters to remain on duty for the second shift last Tuesday as the winds were building, which would have doubled the personnel on hand.
We followed the system. We surged where we could surge. And in fact, I'll be the first one to stand up and say, yeah, we need help. Thank God for our agencies around us. That happened so quickly without delay. With a phone call, we got the resources where we needed to do the greatest good at that time.
LA Mayor Karen Bass continues to be under fire for being in Ghana when the fires began. She was attending the inauguration of that country's new leader. Pictures published today show her at a cocktail party supposedly taken when homes were burning. LA needs a break, and it may get one starting tomorrow. The forecast calls for calmer winds. Sea breezes will begin to come on shore and bring with it moisture, which should raise relative humidity. Even with that, however, there are still fires to put out. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Pacific Palisades, California.
Let's go to Darius Madavi now with our BC-wide weather forecast, but let's see the fire situation in LA first, Darius.
Right, so as we bring this in, you'll notice no 5s and 6s, 7s like we were seeing yesterday, which is a little bit of good news. The fire danger is going to continue to decline. Conditions are still very dry, but the wind is dying down, and that's really the difference maker here. If we take a look here, you can see a lot of those red flag warnings have dropped. We still have a few of them, not quite at the severity level that they were yesterday, but still present because there are some moderate winds still expected to blow through this corridor, but fortunately not around where those biggest fires still are. So a little bit of good news there. If you zoom out a little bit more, I just want to show you those winds that are expected quickly. You'll notice nothing like what we are seeing in terms of those wind gusts over the last couple days. So again, a bit of relief on the way. Those winds aren't expected to pick back up until Sunday at the earliest as of now. So again, a bit of a break for firefighters to get on the ground and try and get those fires more and more under control. Now, if we take a look here in Vancouver, I just want to highlight our winds very quickly. Tomorrow night, looking very gusty, but first we have to get through the precipitation that's coming. If we zoom out to the rest of BC, you'll also notice some wind coming as that cold front sweeps through the province. But for the most part, the winds aren't going to be the big story. It's definitely going to be those temperatures. Let's talk about the rain first, though. You can see that hitting the Central Coast now, going to work its way down to the North Island soon, and then continue to work its way down the South Coast, reaching us here in Vancouver probably tomorrow morning, seeing a few showers in the morning and some flurries in the interior. And again, because those temperatures are dropping, freezing levels are going to drop as much as 2,000 meters in some places. Going to see that snow on the mountains as well. Now, I do want to highlight the fact that as we get into later this week, things are going to calm down quite a bit across the province. Lots more sunshine coming for basically everybody, and going to stick with that into the weekend. Cold but clear is really the story into this weekend. If we take a look at our highs, oopsie, here we go. Let's take a look at our highs over the next couple of days. You'll notice those dropping pretty quickly, especially as we get into Friday and then into the weekend. So expect to see highs in the negatives if you're in the southern interior, which we haven't seen in quite a while. In terms of those lows, also dropping pretty quickly, getting very, very cold. You'll notice Fort St. John, for instance, today, the low, or yesterday, the low was about 4 or 5 degrees, getting down to lows into the minus 20s by the time we get into this weekend. So definitely getting a lot chillier. Here are conditions across the province tomorrow. Again, lots of showers and flurries spreading across the province, but also seeing some sunshine, especially in the afternoon here on the coast. And here's our 5-day forecast, Dan. Less foggy tomorrow morning. Going to see that clearing in the afternoon, and then cold and sunny.
No kidding. Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Back to Los Angeles now. Hundreds of thousands of people have had to flee or are on standby to leave at a moment's notice. This disaster may have you thinking about how prepared you are, if you are. Joining us to help is an expert, Jackie Kloosterboer, a disaster preparedness specialist who helps British Columbians prepare for serious emergencies. Jackie, you have a lot of experience with this. Thanks for coming in. You've brought an emergency kit.
I have. This is what we refer to as your grab-and-go kit. This is a kit for the short term, so when you get an evacuation order, you'll have this kit prepared. You can grab it and you can go. And it's got all the basic items that you need. You're not rummaging around trying to grab things in a panic. And I've been on the front line of so many fires, and I've seen people come into the reception centers and they'd have absolutely nothing. And it's devastating. And with a little bit of preparedness, they can be a much different situation for people. So having a grab-and-go kit for the short term, having your home kit for the longer term, this is what's going to get you through.
So let's talk about the short-term grab-and-go kit. What are the essentials that you include in this? And feel free to hold them up.
Okay, so you're going to have water. We can't live without water. Having some snack foods to get you through. You know, toiletry items, having those, your toothbrush, things like that. If you're on medications, having medications. I am a diabetic. If I don't get my insulin, I'm not going to survive. So talk to your family doctor about storing medications. Having a notebook, something to jot notes down. You know, you're not going to remember everything. So having this available, having a light stick. It could get dark. Having a flashlight and batteries. If you wear glasses, having a spare set of glasses.
Even an old pair?
Yeah, next time you go to your doctor, get a prescription renewed, throw the old pair in the grab-and-go kit. And each family member needs one, and so do your pets. If you're evacuating, take your pets with you. So every member of your family needs a grab-and-go kit. Your pets need a grab-and-go kit. They support your home kits. If you can load those into your car, make sure.
And sorry, you also have food there.
Yeah,
before
you
we
can't.
Forget.
Yeah, don't
you
forget
gotta
your
eat,
food.
Right? Yeah. And what do you have here? What do you suggest here?
These are freeze-dried meals. They heat up very quickly. Those work well. You know, the granola bars, foods that are not going to make you thirsty, foods that don't take a lot of preparation. And
now, when it comes to, forgive my interruption, somebody who's thinking about, I got to prepare all this stuff. Do you suggest they buy one or try and assemble something from what they have in their house?
It really depends. If you're not going to put one together yourself, go out and buy one. You'll still have to include like a change of clothes, things like that in it, but you'll have the basics. You can put them together very easily. A lot of workshops you can take that will teach you how to do that. But the key is get it together and get it together before you're facing the disaster.
When it comes to documents, home insurance, driver's license, what do you suggest people there do?
All of your important documents, especially your insurance papers. You know, a lot of people don't even remember who their insurance is with. It comes out of our bank account once a year. So if you know who that is, review your insurance before we're hitting the forest fire season. Make sure you know what's covered. Having, copies of your driver's license. And you never know where you're going to be when you're evacuated. So, having all of that in your kit, adoption papers. Any important papers is really important to have.
All right, Jackie Kloosterboer, we appreciate your time and your expertise in sharing this with us, as always. Thanks again.
Happy to be here.
Still to come, are you looking to improve your long shot? A new piece of technology might help refine your swings. That's next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The CBC concert series Road to the Junos is in Vancouver. The 5-night series kicks off January 26th and continues to January 30th at the Pearl. Get your tickets at cbc.ca/Junos before they're all gone. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
Want to go golfing but can't travel far or don't want to be out in the elements?
A new piece of technology allows golfers to refine their swings indoors while playing on courses around the world. We visited Iron and Wood Golf Simulators in Victoria to learn more.
My name is Derek Orr. I'm the owner of Iron and Wood Golf Simulators. I'm a PGA of Canada professional and exploring what TGL is, what indoor golf is. The tech that's powering the TGL League from Full Swing is pretty cool. It's all Doppler sensors and cameras that read high speed and very accurately what the ball is actually doing. The technology driving this gives you the ability to play Pebble Beach, practice putts and chips and driving and irons. Boom, baby. It's a new tool that will make the game easier to do in not only, I mean, we're talking about Victoria, but now you can start to build little studios like this. The advantage to being in here on an indoor golf simulator is in real time you're getting swing data on all your shots, but now you can trust those numbers to implement them into not only what your game is like when you play a real golf course, but also working on the micro shots that we don't always get the time to practice in a driving range. So it's almost refining how you practice, but also making it far more efficient, because after every shot, you're getting incredibly accurate data on all the aspects of that shot. Having said all of that, what a cool opportunity now to play at Paynes Valley, which is a Tiger Woods golf course in the Carolinas. So you get this ability to play golf in a 4K high-def situation on a widescreen TV. You can play 18 holes. I can play 18 holes in here in about 45 minutes. What a valuable experience that is when we're trying to get to the grocery store and do these other things.
Play Pebble Beach without the green fees there.
I know nothing about golf. Thanks for being
Now
with us
you know.
tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, on YouTube, and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
We'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National, and Michelle Gassou will be here with him for you the rest of the week. Good night.